Next up, we have Peter Morris, who's here in person, and he's going to be talking about some of his adventures with the top 100 list of objects in the southern sky. If you want, your slides are on here. There we go. Share my screen. Good. You can click through with that. So that's where point up and then draw.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Anyway.
Hi. Good morning, everybody. My name's Peter Morris. I'm a stargazer from Harare. I'm somewhat humbled to be speaking to this august gathering of professional astronomers and amateur astronomers who have made considerable contributions to science. The nearest I came to making a scientifically important observation was in February 1987. I was showing a friend some objects in the sky with binoculars, and I said, next to that star is the Tarantula Nebula. Trouble is, I didn't know there wasn't supposed to be a star there. I class myself not as an amateur astronomer, but as a stargazer. And this presentation is a celebration of visual observing of beautiful objects for the sake of it. And I hope you find it to be light entertainment. I try to encourage enthusiasm for stargazing in the general public, and it's partly because I love the sky and I want to share it, but also because I want to bring more people in, and perhaps more importantly, to create an awareness of light pollution. I first developed an interest in the sky when I started climbing mountains and sleeping under the stars. Knowing what I was looking at, whether it was stars, birds, trees, or flowers, made the environment more familiar and enhanced the outdoor experience. In 2018, I acquired a 203mm Newtonian on a motor-driven equatorial mount. No go-to, purely push-to. I enjoy the physicality of manipulating the telescope, relating patterns in the eyepiece to a paper chart as I star hop to a target. Gives me the same pleasure as navigating a mountain range with a map and compass. I get a real thrill from centering the finder on the expected location of an unseen faint object and seeing it when I look through the telescope eyepiece. The motor-driven mount was purchased in order to make it easier to keep an object centered at star parties. Once I began sketching at the eyepiece, the ability to keep an object centered without adjusting the alignment has been invaluable. Once I got the scope for a while, I looked at planets, I looked at messier objects, I followed suggestions in Sky and Telescope magazine. And then nearly a year later, I stumbled onto the ASSA list of the top 100 objects in the southern sky. The last 3 years have been a great adventure, both in terms of my discoveries of the sky and in the places where my wife, Frances, and I have been to, so that I can observe from dark locations. I determined to observe each object visually. After a while, I realized that recording that I had seen something was not good enough, so I started sketching. I will be showing you some of my sketches, and please be aware they were not intended for sharing, but to improve on my own observational powers. I will also show you some images, and I hope the astrophotographers among you will excuse their primitive nature. So this was the first object I sketched, M23 at Sagittarius, observed on the 26th of August 2019. And I now have only 4 pesky dark clouds to complete the list. So if I can get any hints from people how to see these faint dark clouds like the one in Corona Australis, our suggestions will be gratefully received. So an early discovery came when I centered on Mimosa as a first stop on the star hop to Herschel's jewel box NGC 4755. Close to Mimosa, I saw a star, and you can just see it there. That was deep, deep red. I looked it up and found that it is DY Crucis, also called Ruby Crucis. It's a carbon star with a B-V color index of 5.6, and it is the coolest, reddest star that I will ever see. If I had been using a go-to mount instead of star hopping, I would never have seen it. When I gained confidence in my ability to navigate around the complicated Carina area, I observed the open cluster NGC 3293. It's an absolute gem of cluster. It makes Herschel's jewel box look dull in comparison. It's beautiful. When I finally located Eta Carina, I was thrilled to be able to see the nebulosity around it. Very exciting. I'd always read about the Lagoon Nebula in Sagittarius, and I discovered it's not hard to find, and I think it's the most interesting nebula in the sky. Only after I found it did I realize that it is in fact a naked eye object under a reasonable sky. And now whenever Sagittarius is visible, I look for it. So Omega Centauri has long been my measure of the quality of the sky. If I don't get it naked eye, then I know the sky quality is poor. At a star party, the adults found Omega Centauri to be more exciting than their first telescope view of Saturn. 47 Tucanae is another bright globular cluster that is always interesting. But this one, NGC 6752 in Pavo, this is my favorite globular, mainly because of its interesting shape, but also because I looked at it a lot, because it was the starting point for numerous attempts to see galaxy NGC 6744, which is an easy 4-degree star hop to the south. It's easy to get NGC 6744, but it's hard to see. I suspect my eyes are not as sensitive as they were, but I had to get under a really dark sky to see it, and what a joy to know that I had seen it. Planetary nebulae are another challenge for me, and another type of object that needs a good dark sky. This is NGC 246 in Cetus, sketched at 0335 on the 5th of September 2021. Very important night, because that was the night our first grandchild, a granddaughter, was born. The comments indicate the difficulty I had to observe it. You probably can't read my writing, so I'll read them out. I said, found at last, after many, many attempts, needed a decent sky, exactly where I had looked before. I found that an O3 filter helps a lot with planetary nebulae, and I've learned to confirm a planetary by holding the filter between my eye and the eyepiece and blinking it in and out. Our garden has many big trees, and I can see less than a quarter of the sky. I can see from the zenith down to the eastern horizon, and to the south I can just see 47 Tucanae when it culminates. With the spread of LED floodlights on my neighbor's properties, over the last 3 years, the light pollution has become noticeably worse. Amazing, just 3 years. Open clusters and most globulars are okay, but bright nebulae, planetary nebulae, and particularly galaxies, are very difficult. Francis and I often go camping in wild places, and we love to sleep under the stars. So once I had a telescope, it was only natural to take it along. The place we have frequented is a farm about an hour's drive away, where the manager allows us to camp. To get an unobstructed sky, we camp away from the designated campsite. with a view of a dam with numerous water birds and numbers of vultures. There's an abattoir there and they feed the remains to the vultures, so you get good vultures in the season. And this is a comparison of the sky at my home with that farm, 40 k's away. Same patch of sky, 3 days difference, same exposure on the camera. You can see the difference that having a dark sky makes. So our first big trip with the telescope was to Kazuma National Park, which I'm sure none of you have heard of. It's on the border between Zimbabwe and Botswana, just north of Wangi National Park, south of Victoria Falls. It's really wild. The campsites are unfenced. You have to take your own water, and this particular campsite didn't even have a long drop toilet. The place abounds in wildlife. The ones you can see there, plus smaller ones, plus lions and buffalo, which I didn't manage to photograph on that trip. Also, amazing bird life. If you like wild camping and you like birds, go there. So I brought a steel trunk to transport the optical assembly, and Francis made the firm padding. And that container for the telescope has gone down long, rough, corrugated roads, and it hardly loses collimation. So it's done me well. With many things that go bump in the night, I took along an portable electric fence to keep the observing safe. So this is my observing sheet of M27. It's not one of the top 100 because it's north of the celestial equator, but you may be interested in the comments. I wrote, sounds of elephant at the waterhole about 200 meters away, lion heard earlier, owl calling. We have a sailboat, which we sail on Lake Kariba. The steel trunk is too big to fit in the boat, but the telescope packs quite nicely into the forepeak. And we managed to get through some pretty rough weather without any damage to the instrument. This is a setup in one of our favorite places, which is a bay on the shoreline of Matusadona National Park, a day's sail from Kariba town. The sky there is dark. Some of my most productive observing has been from there. Most of the time it's warm and I can observe in shirt sleeves. It's common to hear hyena and lion at the distance. And earlier this year, our youngest daughter borrowed the boat, moored at this place, and there was a lion killed between the mooring lines. I'm not sure that I'm going to go onto the shore in future unless I take the electric fence with me. That's our biggest hazard. That's it. That particular place has got more crocodiles than most, but every inlet on Kariba has got a couple of big crocs that watch you as you sit on the boat. So when we get on or off the boat, we don't hang around close to the shore, because a friend of ours was actually taken very close to this location a couple of years ago, where he just stood close to the shore and disappeared. Now, this is Robbins Camp at Wangi National Park. The gent with the microscope there is H.G. Robbins, who was a fellow of the Royal Astronomical Society. In the 1930s, he made an agreement with government that if they built the tower, the nation could have his land when he died, and it's now part of Wangi National Park. The roof above the tower was added after Robbins died, and Robbins Camp was the site of my latest attempt to see the dark nebula at Lupus. That's his telescope, pre-1914, made by Ross of London, 60-inch focal length, 4-inch diameter, and it's an apochromat. I didn't even know they made apochromats before the First World War. There's a family link. My wife's grandfather was the electrical engineer at Wanky Colliery, and he often went to Robin's Camp, and he spoke to the family of looking through the stars, that telescope. And that's the first page of the list with all my annotations. And originally, I learned the stars to enhance my experience of the outdoors. Now, it is the experience of the outdoors that enhances my observing. Working my way through the top 100 has been a great adventure. I've gone from having a fair knowledge about the sky to having a fair knowledge of the sky. I've learned to find faint objects in the telescope. My skill in seeing and recording things has improved hugely. I can look up at Harbour and know that where there is a beautiful globular, even if I can't see it with my naked eye. And I know that just below the globular is a galaxy that really tested my observing ability. Much of the reason for me doing this presentation is to recognize and thank those who put together the top 100 list. It's a great resource, and the .db that's available on the internet has helped me hugely in knowing what to look for when I've been struggling to see something. Lastly, I'd like to thank my wife, Frances, for encouraging me in my stargazing, even when it means coming frozen into bed at 3 a.m. on a winter's morning. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Peter.
Yeah.
That was wonderful. So good to see the ASSA 100 list getting worked through. And good luck with the last few. It's an inspirational adventure. Congratulations. You've done it in almost no time at all. 3 years.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Are there any questions in the room? Yes.
Yes, maybe I think just for the benefit of the audience, I think Peter and I were discussing during the break, and he sort of came to me and said, but why you never mentioned Zimbabwe on your software? So maybe I need to pose the question back to him to say, what do you think we should be doing in Zimbabwe together with the work that we're doing and the whole community?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Okay, so the question for those who are online was, what can be done to develop astronomy in Zimbabwe, basically, because it seemed to be the whole in Africa. All the countries around us have got links to South Africa and to the African Astronomical Society, and we don't. We've got a small group of amateurs. Only a few of us are doing observing. The universities are doing almost nothing. There's an astrophysics course at one of them, but they don't have a telescope. And I think there's a need to interrogate or to talk at government level to try and get government and the universities to support astronomy.
Thank you, Peter. There was one just comment from Carol Berta who said you've transported her back in time. She really enjoyed your presentation, and nothing beats sketching under the dark sky. If only she'd known about a portable electric fence. My question on the fence was, why so close? I feel like at that point.
I'm still here.
Have you had anything more up against it?
Well, it gives you the confidence that you don't worry about what might be after.
Well, yeah. Great. Thank you very much, Peter. We really appreciate it. And thank you for coming.